The most counterintuitive truth about loving someone with avoidant attachment is that their worst behavior often signals their deepest feelings. When the avoidant becomes coldest, most distant, most cruel, most withdrawn, it is frequently because they are falling harder than they can tolerate. When they treat you worst, when they seem to care least, when they hurt you most deliberately, it is often because their feelings for you have grown beyond their capacity to manage them safely within their defended system. This inverse relationship between depth of feeling and quality of treatment is one of the most painful aspects of being involved with an avoidant. You give more, show up better, love more deeply, and in response the avoidant becomes meaner, more distant, more hurtful. The natural assumption is that your increased investment is making them pull away because they do not feel the same way. But the reality is often the opposite. They pull away and treat you worse precisely because they do feel the same way, and it terrifies them beyond what their defensive system can handle. Understanding this pattern requires understanding how avoidant attachment processes love and intimacy, why deepening feelings trigger defensive cruelty rather than reciprocal warmth, how the avoidant sphere increases proportionally with their love, and why the person they love most is often the person they hurt most. This understanding does not excuse the behavior or mean you should tolerate it, but it reveals the tragic mechanism that makes avoidance destroy what they most want. Love intensifies the threat in the avoidant's nervous system. The first reason the avoidant treats you worse the deeper they love you is that love intensifies the perceived threat in their nervous system. For most people, falling in love creates feelings of safety, connection, and joy. But for the avoidant whose childhood experiences taught them that closeness leads to pain, abandonment, or engulfment, love triggers alarm bells. The deeper the love, the louder the alarm, the more urgent the need to create distance and protect themselves. The avoidant's nervous system learned in childhood that depending on someone leads to hurt. They reached for caregivers who were unavailable, inconsistent, or rejecting. They learned that expressing needs resulted in disappointment. They developed defensive system built on self-reliance and emotional distance as survival mechanism. This learning is stored in their body and brain as automatic protective response that activates when intimacy deepens. When the avoidant begins to truly love you, their nervous system interprets this growing attachment as danger. The more they care, the more they have to lose. The deeper their feelings, the more vulnerable they become to potential hurt. Their system cannot distinguish between the childhood danger of depending on unreliable caregivers and the present reality of loving available partner. It only knows that deepening attachment equals threat and must be defended against. This threat response manifests as withdrawal, coldness, and cruel behavior. The avoidant becomes mean, not despite loving you, but because they love you. The cruelty is their system's attempt to create the distance their nervous system is screaming for. They are trying to make you pull away so they do not have to feel the terror of their deepening attachment. The worse they treat you, the more desperate their system is to escape the vulnerability their love for you creates. The avoidant may also become hypervigilant for your flaws and reasons to leave once their feelings deepen. Their defensive system needs justification for the withdrawal it is demanding. So they focus intensely on everything wrong with you or the relationship. They magnify minor issues into major incompatibilities. They find evidence that you are not right for them. This devaluation serves to reduce the threat by convincing themselves you are not someone worth loving deeply. The cruelty the avoidant displays when they love you deeply is their system fighting against the attachment. They are at war internally between their genuine feelings for you and their terror of those feelings. The cruel behavior is not reflection of their lack of caring, but evidence of how much they care and how threatening that caring has become to their defended way of being. The avoidant punishes you for making them feel what they cannot handle. The second reason the avoidant treats you worse, the deeper they love you, is that they unconsciously punish you for making them feel emotions they cannot tolerate or integrate. The avoidant spent their life building defenses against deep feeling. They learned to shut down emotion, to rationalize rather than feel, to stay in control rather than be vulnerable. But loving you cracks these defenses and forces them to feel things they have spent decades avoiding. When you make the avoidant feel deeply through your love, your availability, your consistency, you are disrupting their entire emotional operating system. You are making them feel needs they cannot acknowledge, vulnerability they cannot tolerate, dependency they cannot accept. These feelings are deeply uncomfortable and threatening. Rather than taking responsibility for their own feelings, the avoidant blames you for creating them. The punishment manifests as withdrawal of affection, coldness, criticism, or outright cruelty. The avoidant is essentially saying through their behavior that you made them feel things they did not want to feel, and now you must be punished for it. They are angry at you for getting past their defenses. They resent you for making them want something they cannot have. Without risking the vulnerability they have organized their life around avoiding. The deeper you get into the avoidant's heart, the more you threaten their defended identity. They have built an entire sense of self around not needing anyone, being fine alone, being strong through independence. But loving you makes them realize they do need someone. They are not fine alone. They want the connection they have denied wanting. This realization threatens their core identity, and they lash out at you for causing this threatening self-awareness. The avoidant may also punish you through creating situations where you feel as badly as they feel. They want you to experience the discomfort, confusion, and pain that their feelings for you are causing them. By hurting you, they externalize their internal distress. They make you feel the anxiety and pain they cannot process internally. This projection of their discomfort onto you is cruel, but serves defensive function of getting the unbearable feelings outside of themselves. The punishment is unconscious defense mechanism rather than deliberate malice. The avoidant is not consciously thinking about punishing you for making them feel, but their system is reacting to the threat of the feelings by creating distance and pain that pushes you away. The fact that the punishment is unconscious does not make it less harmful, but it reveals that the cruelty is about their inability to handle their feelings, rather than about your worthiness of love. Depth of love equals depth of fear for the avoidant. The third reason the avoidant treats you worse, the deeper they love you, is that for the avoidant, depth of love directly equals depth of fear. The equation is simple and devastating. The more they love you, the more terrified they become. Most people experience some fear with deep love. because vulnerability and potential loss are inherent in caring deeply. But for the avoidant, this fear is magnified to unbearable levels by their attachment wounds. The fear manifests in multiple dimensions. There is fear of losing you and experiencing the abandonment pain they learned in childhood. There is fear of being engulfed by your needs and losing their sense of self. There is fear of being known fully and rejected for who they really are. There is fear of becoming dependent and then having that dependency weaponized against them. Each of these fears intensifies as their love deepens. When the fear becomes overwhelming, the avoidant's only strategy is to create distance. They have not developed healthier ways to manage the fear because they have spent their life avoiding situations that would trigger it. So when love activates intense fear, they revert to their only tool, which is withdrawal and defensive cruelty. The depth of their poor treatment directly reflects the depth of their fear, which directly reflects the depth of their love. The avoidant may also engage in preemptive rejection. They treat you cruelly or end the relationship before you can hurt them or leave them. This strategy attempts to maintain control and avoid the pain of being abandoned by doing the abandoning first. The logic is that if they hurt you and push you away, they do not have to experience the vulnerability of loving you and potentially losing you. The preemptive strike is protection mechanism. The fear the avoidant experiences when they love deeply can be genuinely overwhelming. It may activate physical symptoms of panic, intrusive thoughts about worst-case scenarios, compulsive need to create escape routes. The avoidant is not choosing to be afraid. Their nervous system is responding to deep love as though it is mortal threat. The cruel behavior is their desperate attempt to reduce the threat by reducing the intimacy. Understanding that their cruelty reflects their fear rather than their true feelings helps contextualize the behavior. They are treating you badly because they are terrified, not because they do not love you. But this understanding does not obligate you to tolerate abuse. Their fear and their defensive cruelty are their responsibility to address through therapeutic work, not your responsibility to endure indefinitely. The avoidant creates distance, proportional to their desire for closeness. The fourth reason the avoidant treats you worse, the deeper they love you, is that they create distance that is proportional to their desire for closeness. The more they want to be close to you, the more they need to create compensatory distance to maintain their sense of safety. This creates tragic pattern where their deepest connection moments are followed by their coldest withdrawal. After moments of genuine intimacy, vulnerability, or connection, the avoidant experiences what is often called the vulnerability hangover. They opened up more than their system could tolerate. They let you in further than feels safe. They experienced connection that was beautiful but also threatening. In the aftermath, they panic about how much they revealed and how dependent they felt. The withdrawal that follows is an attempt to re-establish the distance and control they feel they lost. The withdrawal can be dramatic and seemingly come from nowhere. One day the avoidant is affectionate, available, expressing feelings. The next day they are cold, distant, picking fights, or even ending the relationship. This whiplash is not evidence they were faking the connection. It is evidence the connection was real and too threatening. The depth of their withdrawal reflects the depth of the connection they are trying to escape. The avoidant also uses poor treatment to test whether you will leave. Part of them wants you to stay, despite their cruelty, because it would prove you are safe and will not abandon them like their early caregivers did. But part of them wants you to leave because it would relieve them of the terror of continued intimacy. The cruel behavior serves both purposes. It tests your commitment, while also creating conditions for you to leave if the intimacy has become too much. Some avoidants create physical distance when emotional closeness deepens. They suddenly need space, want to slow things down, need time alone. Others create emotional distance while maintaining physical proximity through coldness, disengagement, or criticism. The form of distance varies, but the function is the same. They are counterbalancing the closeness they desire with the distance they need to feel safe. The proportional distance means that the best moments in the relationship are often followed by the worst treatment. The vacation where you felt deeply connected is followed by week of coldness. The night where they expressed love is followed by days of withdrawal. The avoidant is not punishing you for the good moments. They are recovering from the vulnerability those moments required and attempting to re-establish their defended equilibrium. Loving you threatens the avoidant's entire identity structure. The fifth reason the avoidant treats you worse the deeper they love you is that loving you deeply threatens their entire identity structure. The avoidant has built sense of self around being independent, not needing others, being fine alone. Their identity is organized around these defensive beliefs. But truly loving you reveals that these beliefs are protective fiction, rather than truth about who they are. When the avoidant realizes they are not actually fine alone, and that they need you in ways they have denied needing anyone, their identity begins to crumble. They have to face that much of how they have defined themselves is defensive construction rather than authentic self. This identity crisis is profoundly destabilizing. The cruel treatment of you is their attempt to restore the identity that loving you is destroying. The avoidant may double down on their independence precisely when they are feeling most dependent. They make grand statements about needing space and not wanting commitment exactly when their feelings are deepest. They assert their self-sufficiency most loudly when they are realizing they are not self-sufficient at all. This performative independence is an attempt to convince themselves and you that they are still the person they believed themselves to be. Loving you also forces the avoidant to confront the losses they have accepted in service of their defended identity. They have sacrificed intimacy, connection, and love to maintain their protective distance. They have convinced themselves these things do not matter or that they are better off without them. But loving you reveals what they have been missing and what they have given up. This awareness is painful, and they blame you for forcing them to see it. The identity threat makes the avoidant feel like they are losing themselves in the relationship. They experience their growing attachment as a loss of autonomy rather than as expansion of their capacity for connection. They feel like loving you means ceasing to be themselves. This terrifying feeling drives them to assert their separateness through cruel or distancing behavior that proves they still exist as independent entity. The deeper their love, the more their defended identity is threatened, and the more desperately they behave to shore up that identity. The cruelty is their attempt to prove to themselves that they are still the independent person who does not need anyone. Each cruel or withdrawing act is reinforcement of the identity that loving you is dismantling. They are fighting against their own evolution, because that evolution feels like annihilation. The avoidant cannot admit vulnerability, so they demonstrate cruelty. The sixth reason the avoidant treats you worse, the deeper they love you, is that they cannot admit to vulnerability, so they demonstrate its opposite through cruelty. Admitting they love you deeply would require admitting they are vulnerable to being hurt by you. It would mean acknowledging they need you and that they would suffer if they lost you. This admission is intolerable to their defensive system. Rather than expressing vulnerability, the avoidant performs invulnerability through cruel behavior. Being mean to you proves they do not care too much. Being cold proves they are not dependent. Being willing to lose you proves you are not that important. The cruelty is performance designed to convince both you and themselves that the vulnerability they feel is not real, or at least not as intense as it actually is. The performance of invulnerability through cruelty also serves to protect the avoidant from potential hurt. If they show you how much they care, they give you power to hurt them. If they show you how much they need you, they risk the rejection and abandonment they learned to expect in childhood. By being cruel instead of vulnerable, they maintain the illusion of control and protect themselves from the pain of potential loss. The avoidant may also use cruelty to avoid the weakness they associate with expressing love. In their childhood experience, expressing need or love led to disappointment. Vulnerability was punished or dismissed. They learned that showing feelings makes you weak and invites hurt. So they protect themselves from this learned consequence by never showing the vulnerability of love, even when they feel it intensely. Some avoidants also struggle with the gap between what they feel and what they can express. They love you deeply, but they cannot make themselves say it. They want closeness, but they cannot make themselves reach for it. This gap between internal feeling and external expression creates frustration and shame. The cruel behavior sometimes stems from this frustration with themselves that gets projected onto you. The inability to be vulnerable with their positive feelings means the avoidant can only express intensity through negative feelings. They cannot tell you how much they love you, but they can show you how angry they are. They cannot express how much they need you, but they can demonstrate how much they want to push you away. The cruelty becomes the only emotional intensity they allow themselves to express. The person they love most becomes their biggest threat. The seventh reason the avoidant treats you worse the deeper they love you is that you become their biggest threat, precisely because you matter most. The avoidant can tolerate casual relationships with people who do not matter much. They can be kind and available to people they do not love deeply. But the person who gets closest, who matters most, who they love most deeply, becomes the greatest threat to their defended system and receives the worst treatment. You are the threat because you have the power to hurt them in ways no one else can. The more they love you, the more devastating it would be to lose you. The deeper their attachment, the more painful potential abandonment becomes. Their defensive system recognizes you as the person who could destroy them emotionally and marks you as danger that must be managed through distance and defensive cruelty. You are also the threat because you see them most fully. You have witnessed their vulnerability, know their wounds, understand their patterns. This level of being known is terrifying to the avoidant, who has spent their life hiding their true self. The person who knows them best is the person who could reject them most completely if they decided the real avoidant is not worthy of love. The avoidant may treat casual acquaintances and even ex-partners better than they treat you. They are pleasant with people who do not threaten their defended system. But with you, where the stakes are real and the feelings are deep, they are defensive, withdrawn, cruel. This difference in treatment is not evidence you are less valued, but evidence you are most valued and therefore most threatening. Some avoidants also create situations where the person they love most is kept at greatest distance. They maintain shallow connections with many people, but cannot sustain deep connection with the one person who matters. They sabotage the relationship that has the most potential, because that potential makes it the most threatening. The closer you get to their heart, the more dangerous you become to their defended system. Understanding that you receive the worst treatment because you matter most, rather than because you matter least, helps contextualize the pain, but it does not make the treatment acceptable. You are not obligated to stay with someone who hurts you regardless of the psychological explanation for their behavior. The avoidant's deeper love manifesting as a worse treatment is their tragedy to address, not yours to endure. The avoidant hurts you to prove. Their love is not real. The eighth reason the avoidant treats you worse the deeper they love you is that they hurt you as a way to prove to themselves that their love is not real or not as deep as it feels. If they can be cruel to you, if they can push you away, if they can risk losing you, then surely they do not love you as much as they fear they do. The cruelty is self-deception mechanism. The avoidant is terrified by the intensity of their feelings. Deep love feels dangerous and out of control, so they test whether the love is real by behaving in ways that contradict love. If they can treat you badly, they convince themselves the feelings are not that serious. If they can contemplate ending the relationship, they prove to themselves they are not that attached. The cruel behavior is evidence they use against their own feelings. This testing creates destructive cycle. The avoidant feels love, becomes frightened, treats you cruelly to prove the love is not real, feels guilty or empty about the cruelty, recognizes the guilt, reveals the love is real, becomes more frightened, escalates the cruel behavior. Each cycle of cruelty is an attempt to escape the feelings that the cruelty itself confirms exist. The avoidant may also push you to your breaking point to test the limits of your love. If they treat you terribly enough and you still stay, it proves you really love them and might be safe. But if you leave, it confirms their belief that everyone eventually abandons them and that their defenses were justified. Either outcome serves their defensive system in different ways. Some avoidants sabotage the relationship through their cruel behavior because they believe the relationship is doomed anyway. They think their patterns make them incapable of sustaining love. They expect you will eventually see their flaws and leave, so they end it first through their behavior to avoid the pain of being left. The preemptive destruction is an attempt to control the timing and method of the inevitable loss they believe is coming. The cruelty as proof that love is not real is deeply irrational defense mechanism. But the avoidant is not operating from rational place when their feelings deepen beyond their tolerance. They are operating from terrified, defended place that is using any strategy available to reduce the threat. The fact that the strategy is self-destructive and hurts you does not stop their system from employing it. Why understanding this does not mean you should accept it. Understanding that the avoidant treats you worse because they love you deeper provides context for their behavior, but does not make the behavior acceptable or mean you should tolerate it. The psychological mechanism explains the cruelty, but does not excuse it or make it less harmful to you. You can understand why they hurt you while still recognizing that being hurt is not acceptable regardless of the reason. The avoidant's fear, their defensive patterns, their inability to handle deep feelings are their responsibility to address through therapy and committed work on their attachment wounds. These issues are not your responsibility to fix or to endure indefinitely. Understanding should lead to compassion for their struggle while maintaining clear boundaries about what treatment you will accept. Love that manifests as cruelty is not sustainable foundation for healthy relationship. No matter how deep the avoidance feelings are, if they cannot express those feelings in kind and respectful ways, the relationship will damage you. Your understanding of their internal process should not translate into accepting abuse or poor treatment that harms your well-being and self-worth. The avoidant needs to do deep therapeutic work to change the pattern where deeper love creates worse behavior. They need to learn to tolerate vulnerability, to manage their fear without pushing away people they love, to express difficult feelings without cruelty. This work is difficult and takes significant time. You cannot do this work for them, and your staying through their cruel behavior often enables them to avoid facing the necessity of change. You deserve to be loved in ways that feel loving. You deserve a partner who treats you better when they feel more, not worse. The fact that the avoidance cruelty reflects their depth of feeling rather than lack of feeling does not change that you deserve better. Understanding their psychology is valuable, but protecting yourself and requiring actual kind treatment is more valuable. The deepest truth is that deeper love should inspire deeper care, not deeper cruelty. The avoidance pattern is a result of unhealed attachment wounds that create inverse relationship between feeling and treatment. But this pattern is not inevitable or unchangeable. The avoidant who does the deep healing work can learn to let deeper love inspire deeper kindness. Until they do that work, understanding why they hurt you provides explanation, but does not create obligation to stay and be hurt. How to recognize when cruelty reflects deep feeling versus genuine disinterest. One of the most confusing aspects of this pattern is distinguishing between cruelty that reflects deep feeling the avoidant cannot handle versus cruelty that reflects genuine lack of interest or investment. Not all poor treatment from avoidance signals deep love. Sometimes the avoidant is genuinely not that invested, and their poor treatment simply reflects their lack of care. Learning to distinguish between these is critical for protecting yourself. Cruelty that reflects deep feeling typically follows periods of genuine intimacy and connection. The avoidant was close, vulnerable, connected, and then suddenly becomes cold or cruel. This whiplash pattern suggests the intimacy triggered their fear and the cruelty is defensive withdrawal. If there was no real intimacy or connection before the poor treatment, it may simply reflect lack of investment, rather than defensive fear response. The avoidant who is treating you badly because they love you deeply will typically show signs of internal conflict. They seem torn between pushing you away and pulling you close. Their behavior is inconsistent. They hurt you, then seem remorseful or confused about their own behavior. This conflict suggests they are fighting between their feelings and their fear. If the avoidant is consistently cold without any signs of conflict or ambivalence, they may simply not be that invested. The defensive cruelty also typically escalates when the relationship deepens or when commitment is discussed. The worst treatment comes in response to increased intimacy or relationship progression. If the poor treatment is constant regardless of the level of intimacy or has been present from the beginning without any honeymoon period, it may reflect personality issues or lack of investment, rather than avoidant fear response to deep feeling. Watch also for whether the avoidant shows caring through actions, even when their words or emotional availability are cruel. The avoidant who loves you deeply may be cold verbally, but still shows up when you need them, remembers important details about your life, makes efforts in practical ways. If there is no caring behavior at all, even in non-emotional domains, the poor treatment may reflect genuine disinterest rather than defended deep feeling. The avoidant treating you badly because they love you will also typically react with panic or regret when you establish boundaries or threaten to leave. The thought of losing you triggers their fear of loss, even though they have been pushing you away. If the avoidant seems relieved or indifferent when you create distance or leave, they likely were not that invested to begin with. The defensive cruelty comes from someone who is terrified of losing you. Genuine disinterest creates indifference to your presence or absence. Understanding this distinction protects you from staying in a situation where someone is simply not that interested while claiming or appearing to have avoidant patterns. Not all poor treatment is defensive response to deep feeling. Sometimes people treat you badly because they do not care much about you. Your job is to discern the difference and protect yourself either way. The cycle of closeness, followed by cruelty, creates trauma bonds. The pattern where the avoidant treats you worse when they love you deeper creates particularly strong trauma bonds that make leaving difficult, even when the treatment is clearly harmful. The intermittent reinforcement of connection, followed by cruelty, activates the same neurological patterns as addiction. Your brain becomes hooked on the cycle of pain and relief. The moments of genuine connection and vulnerability from the avoidant are intensely rewarding. After periods of coldness and distance, when they finally open up or show affection, the relief and joy are magnified. Your brain releases dopamine and other reward chemicals. These high moments feel more powerful than they would in stable relationship because of the contrast with the painful low moments. But then the cruelty returns, and you are plunged back into pain, confusion, and desperate attempts to return to the high of connection. This cycle creates addiction-like pattern where you become focused on getting back to the good moments and willing to tolerate increasing levels of poor treatment to get there. The avoidance pattern of deeper love creating worse treatment keeps you trapped in this cycle. The trauma bond also creates situation where you begin to associate love with pain. You start to believe that intense feeling equals intense suffering. The avoidance treatment teaches you that being deeply loved means being deeply hurt. This toxic association can damage your ability to recognize healthy love when it is offered, because healthy love feels too calm or boring compared to the intensity of the traumatic pattern. The cycle also keeps you in a state of hypervigilance and anxiety. You are constantly monitoring the avoidance mood and behavior, trying to prevent the next withdrawal or cruel episode. You walk on eggshells. You manage your own needs and feelings to avoid triggering their defensive reactions. This constant stress creates trauma responses in your own nervous system. Breaking the trauma bond requires recognizing the pattern for what it is. The intense connection moments do not make up for or justify the cruel treatment. The fact that the avoidant loves you deeply but expresses it through cruelty does not mean you should stay and endure the cruelty. The cycle is designed to keep you trapped. Your recognition of it is first step toward freeing yourself. You must also recognize that hoping for change while staying in the pattern enables the avoidant to avoid facing the necessity of real therapeutic work. Your endurance of their cycle allows them to continue the pattern without experiencing the consequences that might motivate them to change. Leaving or establishing firm boundaries is often the only thing that creates enough crisis to motivate the avoidant to address their patterns. What the avoidant loses through this pattern. The tragic irony of the pattern where deeper love creates worse treatment is that the avoidant loses what they most want through their defensive cruelty. Their fear-driven poor treatment pushes away the person they love most deeply. They destroy the relationship they most value because they cannot tolerate the vulnerability that relationship requires. The pattern is self-fulfilling prophecy, where their fear of loss creates the loss they fear. The avoidant loses the opportunity for genuine intimacy and connection. By treating you worse when they feel more, they prevent the relationship from deepening in healthy ways. They cannot experience the joy and fulfillment of being fully known and loved because their defenses prevent them from being fully present. They sacrifice the best parts of relationship to protect themselves from the worst parts they imagine. They also lose you specifically. The person who got closest to their heart, who they loved most deeply, leaves because the cruelty becomes intolerable. The avoidant then experiences the abandonment they feared but caused through their own behavior. They confirm their belief that people leave while refusing to acknowledge that people leave because of how they are treated, not because they are inherently unlovable. The avoidant often experiences deep regret after losing someone they loved through this pattern. Once you are gone and the threat of intimacy is removed, they can feel the depth of their love without the fear. They recognize what they lost and how their behavior destroyed it. But by then, it is usually too late because you have healed and moved on, or you no longer trust them enough to return. The pattern also damages the avoidant's sense of self and their belief in their capacity for relationship. Each time they destroy relationship through their defensive cruelty, they confirm their belief that they are broken or incapable of love. This belief becomes more entrenched and makes change seem more impossible. They spiral into resignation that they will always be alone because they cannot stop hurting people they love. Some avoidants eventually seek therapy after losing important relationship through this pattern. The loss becomes the crisis that motivates them to address their attachment wounds. They recognize they cannot continue living this way and they commit to the deep work necessary to change. But this realization often comes too late to save the relationship that mattered most. Understanding what the avoidant loses helps you recognize that leaving is not abandoning them, but potentially giving them the wake-up call they need. Your tolerance of their cruelty enables the pattern to continue. Your leaving creates consequences that might motivate real change. You are not responsible for their healing, but your boundaries might be the catalyst that starts it. The avoidant's internal experience during the cruel episodes. Understanding the avoidant's internal experience during the episodes where they treat you worst helps contextualize the behavior without excusing it. The avoidant is typically not feeling powerful or indifferent during their cruel treatment of you. They are experiencing internal chaos, fear, and often significant self-loathing even as they hurt you. During the cruel episodes, the avoidant's nervous system is in high alert. They are experiencing the physiological symptoms of threat response, including racing heart, shallow breathing, tunnel vision, fight or flight activation. Their body is responding to intimacy as though it is danger. The cruelty is their attempt to escape this threatening feeling by creating distance that reduces the physiological distress. The avoidant is also typically experiencing intrusive thoughts about worst-case scenarios. They imagine you abandoning them, betraying them, suffocating them, controlling them. These thoughts feel real and immediate, even though they are projections based on past wounds, rather than present reality. The cruel behavior is their attempt to prevent these imagined catastrophes by pushing you away before the threats can materialize. Many avoidants also experience significant shame and self-loathing during and after the cruel episodes. They know they are hurting you. They hate themselves for their behavior, but they feel powerless to stop the defensive reactions. The shame deepens the self-belief that they are broken and unworthy of love, which further entrenches the defensive patterns in vicious cycle. Some avoidants dissociate during the worst moments of their defensive cruelty. They emotionally disconnect from the situation and from awareness of how their behavior is affecting you. This dissociation protects them from the full impact of what they are doing, but it also prevents them from moderating their behavior or recognizing the harm in real time. After the cruel episodes, many avoidants experience confusion about their own behavior. They question why they acted that way. They may not remember the intensity of the fear that drove the cruelty. They struggle to reconcile their genuine love for you with their harmful treatment of you. This confusion can prevent them from taking full accountability because they genuinely do not understand their own patterns. Understanding this internal experience reveals that the avoidant is suffering through this pattern even as they make you suffer. But their suffering does not obligate you to stay and be hurt. They need professional help to address these patterns, not your continued tolerance of abuse. Compassion for their struggle should coexist with firm boundaries about what treatment you will accept. The truth is that love should make people kinder, not crueler. The deepening of feeling should inspire deepening of care and respect. The pattern where the avoidant treats you worse as they love you more is dysfunction that requires healing, not romantic intensity, to be endured. Recognize it, understand it, have compassion for the wounded person behind it, and protect yourself from it. Your well-being matters more than understanding their psychology. Your future happiness matters more than tolerating their present cruelty. Choose yourself even as you understand them.